Fellow Ghanaians, a very good evening to all of you, and thank you so much for joining us here on Upfront on the JoyNews channel. It's a Thursday, the 22nd day of April 2021. And we're still having conversations about the nominees by President Akufo-Addo for ministerial, particularly in this case, deputy ministerial appointment. But we have added both. That's the ministerial appointments and deputy ministerial nominations. And we're asking that all-important question. As you can see here, assessing the ministers, the gender question. So since 2008, there's been lots of conversations about appointing women into government. For many of us, we have agreed it is very, very important to have women participate in our political process and by extension, our democracy. Now that has resulted in promise of at least 30% of women in government. So we put that to strict proof and find out whether that has been achieved in the appointment of ministers or the nomination of ministers by President Akufo-Addo. We do know, for instance, that if you look at the 2017 figures, for instance, out of the 126 who were appointed as ministers by President Akufo-Addo, only 20 of them were women. Okay? Now, if you had to take that to 2021, and as you can see that here, now you have 86 ministers appointed, 16 of them are women. But it doesn't look bad if you have to look at it percentage-wise. Of course, it doesn't meet the 30%, but if you're looking at it in percentage terms, it has increased from 15% to 18%. So maybe you could say that that is not bad in itself. But can we do more? Well, many persons believe for a government whose leader, for instance, that's the President Akufo-Addo, at a point in time championed a bit of an affirmative action, if I could put it that way, because he said that, look, for constituencies that had female MPs in the NPP, that was prior to the 2015 primaries, those women should not be contested. Now, that didn't go well with NPP members, and so they spoke against it. Eventually, that did not happen. But if you were to look at the figures, so in the first term, 15.87% of the ministers were female. That has increased to 18.6%. But if you're looking at it in nominal value, 20, a reduction to 16. But of course, the number of ministers has reduced. And if you look at it critically, you would see that 60% of women in Ghana's parliament representing the NPP have been giving appointments as ministers or deputy ministers. And I'll explain. You have 20 female MPs representing the NPP, and of this 20, 12 of them have been appointed as either ministers or deputy ministers. 4 of them were appointed as ministers, so you know of Mavis Howard-Thompson, you know of Ursula Owusu-Ekufo, you also know of Frida Prembe, who is Minister of State, and then finally you know of Sarah Adjua-Safo, who is Minister of Gender, Children and Social Protection. We have 10 also being appointed as deputy ministers just yesterday, and for those deputy ministers, we know 8 of them are members of parliament. Now that's instructive, because the Constitution says you should appoint majority of your ministers from parliament. Now, if you look at the fact that the NPP actually appointed 57 persons from parliament out of the 137 seats that they have, and in here, if you look at the male representation, you're looking at 117 male MPs and 20 female MPs. Of the 20 female MPs, 60% of them have been appointed as ministers. Can that be said to be enough? Can we say that is an indication that we are actually making progress? Well, here we are talking about just 18% of them being appointed into government. And when it comes to the legislature, you would realize that less than 10% of Ghana's legislature are women. That doesn't compare favorably to the global figure, which has increased from 13% in 2000 to 25% in 2020. So this evening here on Upfront, we look at the gender question. We want to understand what this means. Are we pleased with the appointment so far? Can it be said that, well, even though the numbers may have reduced, percentage-wise, we have done well with this particular situation where we see it increasing from 15% to 18.6%. But we also ask that important question: does it really matter who serves in Ghana's government? Does it matter? Must it necessarily be a man or a woman, or one who is competent? And if we're to look at the constitutional provision that says you should appoint more than 50% from Parliament, can't we say that based on the numbers in Parliament at least, where 60% of them have been giving ministerial appointments, it's a good sign? My name is Winston Amwa, and thank you very much for joining us here on Upfront on the JoyNews channel. When we return after this break, I'll be introducing my guest to you, and then together we explore this together as we find a better understanding of the situation and the way forward. Right, so welcome back, and thank you very much for staying with us. We apologize for the technical hitch over there. And so we're assessing the ministerial nominations, and we're asking the gender question, because over the period we've consistently talked about the need to have increased women participation in the country's politics, right from the local level to the national level, the legislature, as well as even the executive. And as I've been showing you, you have 16 women as ministers and deputy ministers. Well, we're actually talking about 6 of them being ministers. They've already been vetted and approved and are serving, and you have 10 of them who are deputy ministerial nominees. And this evening, we're going to be asking that question, whether this is enough and what we can do in ensuring that we achieve that desired target that we are asking. And to help me, have a better conversation and a better understanding of all of this is Dr. Nansata Yakubu, who is a democracy engineer. She's joined us. She's a gender activist as well. Dr. Nansata Yakubu, good evening, and thank you very much for joining us.
Good evening, Winston. Happy to join the conversation.
Great, yes. I mean, we're excited that you have joined us this evening, because there's been a lot of talk about the numbers. And if you look at the numbers critically, we're looking at an increase from 15.8% to 18%, Dr. Nansata Yakubu. Isn't that an improvement from, the previous administration, as in the first term of Akufo-Addo, compared to the second term? Shouldn't we be at least excited that we're seeing increased women participation in the executive?
Winston, there are many layers to the question. The issue of representation for women, be it political participation through Parliament or through the executive, should not be tied just to the number of women increasing. We have not attained the minimum standard. The minimum says 30%. If the minimum is going to be expanded from the current 18% increase, and then we see the rest of the maybe 11.9% to get to the minimum 30 through boards and other positions that might be made through other executive positions, then we can start talking of an increase. But for now, Parliament's increase that we have does not really speak to the core of the issue. We know that we have had a net gain of over 40, I think 40 or 45 MPs, because we had 125 MPs, and there was a call for a reduction, and now we have about 86 MPs. So that in itself already cuts to the core of a lot of ministers being out of that bunch. Now, if you are going to appoint a lot of people from Parliament, which of course you are mandated to do, and that has been done with the ministers. At the deputy ministerial level, for instance, you are not bound by that. That one, you can appoint more people out of Parliament, so to speak. So if we are talking about the people who have been appointed to executive ministers or executive deputy ministers from Parliament, yes, there might be a nominal increase. That is because the whole conversation about how many women goes to parliament is a whole different one that we are going to, talk about. So yes, from the 20 in your party who are in parliament, you have taken 12. We can say that yes, that has been a sign of increase. But then, to the greater extent where other women, competent women, even if you want to remain within your party, there are women who can still have been appointed to other positions, then we haven't answered, the question. So yes, there might be some increase, but that increase, as is subjected to your own analysis, is not an increase that I think anybody wants to celebrate. You would understand where I'm coming from. So yes, there's an increase, but it's not an increase that is exciting.
I will get to why the increase is not exciting. Yes, I'll get to why the increase is not exciting. But you're also looking at ministers, and over here, the interpretation normally put to the constitutional provision is that when it says majority of your ministers, it includes deputy ministers. So you have the president appointing, 86 ministers, 57 of them are from parliament, and of the 57, 12 of them are women. Yes, you've talked about the fact that in the NPP, group in parliament, 20 of them are women, and so 60% of them have been appointed. But you would also agree that, sometimes a lot of things would come to play here, and so the participation and active involvement in politics also would matter when it comes to appointment, wouldn't it, Dr. Yakubu?
Yes. So I agree that it comes into contention here. But my point is, in the ministerial, the first year, the ministers, the substantive ministers, a lot of them, it's parliament. You have gotten all that out of there. The deputy ministers, there's still a big window of opportunity for the deputy ministerial positions, especially as we are having quadruples and triples and doubles. There's a big opportunity for you to be able to contribute to make sure that your executive level is going to work out. If we look at the numbers now, we are talking about how many women? 16 women.
Yes, 16.
I think 16 women with 2 regional ministers. 2 female regional ministers, if my memory serves me. So in that case, that's 18 women. If you do 18 out of the 86, you definitely don't have a 30%. I am not sure, even for that, at that level, you definitely don't have a 30% of that tier. So that in itself is and what I'm saying is that the opportunity, if you look at Article 79, 78, Chapter 8, that's what deals with the ministers and all this. The deputy minister does not have to be a member of parliament. You can take deputy ministers outside a parliament. So even if you think that it's going to affect your caucusing or your opportunity for a lot of parliamentary work or all that, you could have also had other people outside. And indeed, we have seen some people on the deputy ministers list who are outside parliament. So that's why I'm saying that could also be another opportunity to get more women, because you don't have a lot of women MPs. Agreed. That is a different conversation. Now, the opportunity is to bring people into the executive positions, and you want to make sure that your women deficit has been addressed. So what do? You appoint people who are equally qualified from outside parliament to take up those positions. The only person I'm sure you can see is the Deputy Minister for Information is female. Yeah, we have, I think she's about the only one outside parliament who is female. I'm not too sure on the list. I'm sure you will have the longer list, so if you look on it. But that one, she's female and she's not an MP. So that is allowed. But that was a big opportunity for the president to try to get the numbers to back up. And we'll have a real, then we can have a real increase, not this increase that is not really, we are not too sure about it.
Now, so yes, we'll get back to this particular issue, because like I started by saying earlier, the understanding is that ministers and deputies all become ministers, and so you're looking at the two as having majority from parliament. Because if you look at the ministers critically, the first batch of ministers that were appointed, 23 of them are MPs, 23 of them are not MPs. So that's the same number. So the president actually uses the deputy ministers, where you have 34 of them being members of parliament, to actually satisfy that constitutional provision that says you should have majority from parliament. So we're talking about 57 of them being members of parliament, because you have 34 deputy ministers coming from parliament. If you look at the list, majority of them are from parliament, but only 5 of them are not in parliament. But let's look at one thing. You've talked about us not going to even the legislature. But some would say that is where it all starts from. Because if you get into parliament, and as we have come to agree in Ghana, people go to parliament because they want to become ministers. And so if you go to parliament, there's every possibility of catching the president's eye and by extension being appointed into parliament. Shouldn't the advocacy, shouldn't the real work be to maybe even get them into the participate locally, and majority of them getting into parliament, then it extends to the executive, Nansata?
Yes, Winston, and indeed so. If you remember when you asked the question, I told you that there are different layers to the question, because the issue of parliament itself, it was in 1954, so like 60, we're talking about 67 years ago, when women were given the opportunity to contest and to vote. And then at independence, it was reaffirmed, that we can contest elections and then we can vote. From then, we had one female speaker in 2009, who herself was not really from the House. The former, I think former, you remember, Bamford Adu.
Yes, Supreme Court judge.
I don't know how they would say her lordship, her ladyship. Yes. Bamford, Joyce Bamford. So that was the female one. If you look, our numbers are always oscillating. They are always oscillating between 15 to 16 to 18. It has never been the best. For the first time, this parliament, coincidentally, it's 2020. It's 20 NDC members of parliament female, 20 MPP members of parliament female, 40 of them out of a house of 275. But even if you look at when we were 230 and increase, we've never really even crossed, a very good, it's never been a good threshold for us. So we are now at 14%, or it's not even a quarter, about 14 point something percent of the house. That is not good enough, Winston. And if you look, it's even worse at the local levels. The local level is been dwindling. In about 2015, we're about 6% of district assemblies. So it's been dwindling. So if the bottom, the grassroots politics, advocacy is not really encouraging a lot of people to put themselves up for public office, for instance, and then party structures are also preventing a lot of people from effectively participating at the top, then we have a big deficit that we all have to work on. And we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Other countries have done it. Ghana is signatory to all the most important, gender commitments that there are. We are signatories to all of them, from CEDAW to Beijing plus 25 platforms. We are on the African Human Chat. We are on a whole of signature, and we have been working consistently. The point is that at every time that an election comes in, we pause and ask ourselves, what are we not doing right? First, there's the issue of the executive-legislative fusion, which you have just referred to, that most members of parliament are there because they want a ministerial position. Because our parliament also has that executive clause where a member of parliament can also be a member of the executive. So that in itself hinders a whole lot of issues. A president has to choose up to 50% of people from parliament. It hinders a whole lot of issues, because all these issues also contend with party structure, a party strategy, how a party wants to move forward, and all that. In some countries, what they have done is to do the women's seat theory. Uganda does it. Fine, we may not go that route, but I think we have to do an introspection and see what is not right, Winston. You can't have more than half of your country's population not being involved in decision making, not being involved in executive, decisions that are made for this country. It doesn't work well for men. It doesn't work well for female. It doesn't work well for the country's, development. In total, as at 2020, in total, across the parliament, executive, council of state, judiciary, public institutions, and board, women were not up to 30%. Women are up to 30%. Yes, so that's why the discussion shouldn't even also just stay at parliament. Women were not up to 30%.
Yes, so coming
so
back
that's why I'm saying that if you are bringing in executive deputy ministers and executive ministers, and we are going to be at 18% of the current ministers, let's see after all the boards are constituted and all that, whether we will really have a big bump. Because as for this one, it's a bit artificial to start celebrating.
Now let's look at, a point that you make when you say we're not doing enough. Now, I know in 2015, the NPP tried and said, as a way of encouraging female participation in parliamentary elections. Now, for constituencies which had female MPs, it said nobody should contest those seats. Now, the party shut it down, and I can remember the likes of Gifty Eugenia Kusi contesting and losing the Takwan Swayam seat to George Mekuduka, who's today been appointed as deputy, who's been nominated as deputy Lands and Natural Resources Minister. Irina Toshiado then also lost her primaries to Carlos Ahinkra, who became a deputy minister of Trade and Industry. Now, that situation was actually shut down by the party. 2, in political party parliamentary primaries also, we have seen, for instance, a reduction in filing fees for women by half. Isn't that enough? Doesn't that give you, the encouragement that within the political elite, efforts are being made to ensure that there's increased female participation?
Winston, when we talk about increased female participation, it cuts across the board. It's not just a political party issue. You also have society's commitment to make sure that the gender issues, gender dynamics are addressed. Even at the ministerial level, where it's just technocratic work and doesn't even involve politicians. Even HR for civil service, public sector, we have issues there. If we leave it with political party first, safe seat theory, that was what the MPP wanted to implement. Safe seat theory, there's a lot of consensus with safe seat theory, Winston. You can't impose it. If a party just comes out and say, look, this is what we want to do, it won't work because there's always a lot of competition for seats. So the party has to find a way of introducing it. It can be something that they can take to their Congress to discuss. It can be an internal conversation they can start discussing through different wards and what to say. Look, if we are thinking of putting women forward, what should we do? One thing that has been effective in other jurisdictions is that you make sure that if there are going to be 3 men contesting, there are also going to be 3 women contesting. Do you understand? Like the number of men who are contesting should be equal by the number of females, women who are contesting for the primaries. That has worked for some people in some cases. And as I said, in other cases, they mandate a women representation, like how at the local level, where the president has an opportunity to nominate some people to the district assembly. Effectively, they have ended up submitting more women because there's always that deficit. Anyway, that is also another opportunity. But we can't just leave it that, the party shut it down.
Hello, Dr. Yakubu.
The political party, the 22 candidates, we had 126 female contestants. But we had what? 40. We had 126 being voted for into the House. So that means that if we probably had a coefficient of about 400 or even 450, that also doubles the extent. So the parties need to do more. They need to have an internal conversation about how they put forward more female representation, because that is where the diversity is.
How about women groups and advocates also doing more?
Yes, women groups and advocates, Winston, you will remember in this country, have always done more. The issues about women should not be fought for women alone. And we are very happy that a lot of men are joining women in that call. In times past, you undertake gender training or gender fora or things about that, and you get there and it's only women. It used to be so interesting. It's only women, but now it's not like that. You get there, there are men, there are women. Look, planning officers, budget officers across the district assembly, ministry, everybody turns up because gender is an issue for both what? Men and women. Women's group, you remember the Women's Manifesto from 2004. The Women's Manifesto put forward a 10-point resolution about issues for women that political parties should commit to. Interestingly, if you look at the manifestos for both the MPP and the NDC, they are very effective strategic points that have been put forward for women, including this 30% minimum, appointments in their own manifestos. So apart from the fact that internationally we are committed, in our constitution we are committed, in our own party manifestos we are committed, yet when it comes to action, Winston, we are not committed. So what is holding people back? Look, the 10-point manifesto, some of it includes even issues about women and access to land. Women economic empowerment issue. It's there for everybody to see. And the parties have always upheld it. Anytime they are drawing up their manifestos, they invite women's group to even do a critique, of the manifesto to try to see if they have made the gender, there's women in media, women in conflict peace, women with special needs, and then even the issue about promoting institutions with a mandate that to promote women's rights. So there's a lot that women's group have been doing. They've been carrying a lot over the years. So it is not that they are not doing, but as we said, it is not women alone who have to fight. When there's an opportunity for politicians, they shouldn't do political expediency. They should be bold and put forward competent women, even if they are within your own party. Women are not a homogeneous group. So definitely within your own party, you have women of varying, education, or varying experiences, and indeed, who can serve the purpose at some of these, ministries. You remember that if we go back to the deputy ministers list, for instance, up to more than, we can say close to 80-something% of that list are new people.
Yes.
And they are new. Yes, they are new people. They are new people. So even if, for instance, the president wanted to appoint people, let's just say for the sake of putting forward the issue of experience in parliament, were there no women in parliament who have returned to parliament before these new ones went? If we are even going to just go along, people with experience in parliament who probably can do it, there were women there with skill sets.
He appointed 8 of them. He appointed 8 of them.
Yes, I know, but I'm just saying that for the new, they could have appointed all of them. What is wrong with appointing all the 20 women? And you putting forward an argument that I don't have enough women in parliament anyway. So if I have 20, I am appointing all of them into different positions. Some in executive deputy minister, some in executive ministers. There's nothing wrong with that. When there would have been something phenomenal, would have been having a different conversation by now. Would have said, yes, the numbers are not there. Does that mean that if there were even more than 20 women, the president would appoint? And I'm sure I would have been one of them say,
the president must also ensure original balance in his appointments. And so he would have to weigh all of these and decide, for instance, if I'm going to this particular region, who's my best candidate in serving in my government? Yes, you want to appoint women, but you would agree that sometimes also you'd look at the best person to serve in the government. And if that best person is a woman, why not? If that best person is a man, why not? 60% appointment isn't bad, Dr. Yakubu.
60% out of how many?
Out of 20. We're making reference to the percentage.
That's what I'm saying, that there are different layers to what we are talking about. This is the one opportunity. One opportunity is through the parliament. What about the other opportunity? Does the deficit in parliament prompt a more proactive outlook in boards, in the Council of State, in the National Peace Council, in Media Commission, across the boards, in other executive sectors of the economy? That is what we are asking. Nobody begrudges. It's the president's prerogative to appoint. Even if he appointed all men or all women, it is his prerogative. We agree. But in fairness, in economic justice, societal justice, and in his own commitment to make sure that gender progress, the goals we achieve, the sustainable development goals. He's an AU champion, UN, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And for his own legacy, he needs to do more. And yes, he has signposted. I have taken 60% of the women who are in parliament in my party. Don't forget that you are also remaining within the party. So it's not 60% of the women in parliament. It's 60% of the women who represent my party in parliament. So I have put them forward. Good. What about, Mr. President, what about the other areas? Are we going to see the same thing? Are we going to see 60% of women across boards? Are we going to see 30% of women across? Those are the kind of conversations we're waiting for out there.
Yeah, we're waiting for the board appointments. But I see someone sending a message and saying, well, just find out from Dr. Yakubu. So why does it matter that we appoint more women into our governance structure and by extension our democracy? Why does it matter that we have at least 30% of that appointment? You want to help that person understand that?
Fantastic. First, maybe the person joined late because, we started off by talking about committee. First, Ghana as a country is a model of democracy. We pride ourselves on fairness, freedom, justice, equity, and equality. Ghana has signed on and committed to a lot of gender commitments, internationally, domestically, continental, at the sub-regional, ECOWAS, AU, UN, and all the others. We are there. Now, the issue about women's voice and political leadership is one of the main catalysts that is going to drive gender equality and to also accelerate the achievement of the sustainable development goals. You have a country in which women are more than half of the population, but women are in less than half of all endeavors that will lead to this country's development. It doesn't help men, it doesn't help women, it doesn't help the country. That is what we are stating. It is not, I don't want to bring in development paradigms and theoretical basis and things like that. Ghana itself has accepted that it needs to do more. The minimum is 30%. The minimum is 30%. That shouldn't be difficult. And that is not because there aren't anybody to be appointed. Look, in development discourse, in practice, and in policy planning over the year, women have been rendered invisible. There's a lot of cancel culture about women's with the capacity and what women can do, because our culture and how we have grown up is such that a lot of people have a lot of unconscious bias. Even if you look at this deputy minister's list, the first people want to pick out and poke at their issues are the women who are represented there. Meanwhile, I know 1,000 of the men on that list who probably cannot even stand in terms of competence to the women who have been nominated, because they think that the women are easy pickings. They are the weakest link, so they render them invisible and they make their placement subordinate, and sometimes make it look like maybe you are just going there to add to the numbers. But that is not the case. In looking at issues about women in development and gender and development over the years that we have progressed up to this point, we cannot not fulfill even what is in our constitution. That you can't discriminate against a person because of their gender, their color, their ethnicity, the region they come from. Just as we ensure regional balance, it's the same way we can ensure gender balance. It's the same way, and that is fair. It's just an issue about fairness. Because when you leave out women from the conversations, there's a whole development paradigm that you leave out. There's a lot that women have contributed, and everybody accepts that they have. Yes, the competition is tight. It's tight amongst men, it's tight among women, and it's tight across the gender for both men and women. So that is why people in executive leadership are able to say, this is the person I want to go with, or that person is because of these other reasons. Nobody just wants women to be appointed because they are women. No, that's not what we are saying.
Exactly.
Nobody is saying that.
Yes,
but when you look in a list of 30-something and there are 4 women, even you as a man, you should cringe. Yes, you should cringe. Why?
So you've talked about, you've made a very important point that the competition is very tough. Now, there's a school of thought that argues that, look, politics, and when you're making appointments, you look at loyalty. You look at persons who are loyal to a cause. And so, yes, for those persons who are loyal to the cause, if they are within your, they certainly would be within your party. We've seen in the past, an attempt to have, an all-inclusive government sort of. J. Kufuor had tried it. It didn't really, work. In the current dispensation, you don't see that happening. So I guess the point should be getting more women participate in activism, participate in politics, get themselves noticed, and then the conversation starts from there, isn't it?
Winston.
Dr.
More women, have always participated in activism, in politics. Let me tell you where the difference is. You will have 1,000 women at the base of any political party. All the political parties in this country, right from CPP, Kwame Nkrumah, the original MPP, all of them, up to today, UP, all of them, the base was women from Makola to the universities. When you get to the leadership, that is where the problem starts. It becomes a pinnacle. So we have it like a triangle. The base is women. Look, when a political party is even going, let me give you a little analogy. When a political party is going to have, what do they used to call the campaigns? When they go for those outdoor campaigns, guess who goes to sweep the place, set up the chairs, take the water, make the food and everything? Yet, when they are going to have elections, Congress, they are going to elect constituency executive. You know what they do? They put the women as women's organizer. What is women's organizer? If you want to mainstream, why don't you put it there? Is an organizer not enough? You can make it the party's organizer, and then you can have, whatever the advices and deputies and all that. So we have been participating. You know why? Men, let me just finish this point. Men, in development terms, in the discourse and practice and policy, men have always led, made decisions for men. And of course, because there are no women in those spaces, the decisions ultimately are for men. So at that point, even now, it's just because they don't want to say that they are not adding. So at that point, they say, hey, make sure women's organizer, or they make you a 5th vice chair, a 10th vice chair. How does that one contribute to effective political party practice? It doesn't. So it is not that one. We have always, or they'll make you secretary, or they'll say third deputy treasurer. Things like that. Don't help anybody.
So we've seen, yes, but on that particular score, we have seen women contesting for chairman or chairpersons of political parties. The chairperson of the Betty Modidiso contested for the chairperson position of the NDC. She lost. The General Secretary of the Convention People's Party is a woman. The General Secretary of the People's National Convention is a woman. The chairperson of the CPP is a woman. You can see that happening in there. Anita D'Souza contested as national organizer of the NDC and lost. And so this is looking more like, as you say, the political party structure identifying that, well, if women are losing the other positions, at least there should be a position that is reserved for women as a starting point to bring them into the party leadership and the party executive. No. Inherently, it means that that political party is not seeking to build the structures. Why are women losing? That is the conversation they should have. And unity should not be the rule. You say you can name them. If I ask you to name all the political party, the men who are political party, what across the parties, who will spend some time. Not only are there many, some of them you won't remember because they are not. You will need to put the list up. So these are the exceptions, and the exceptions should not be the rule. That is all that we are saying. Look, if you put 5 women in a position to run and you don't name it women's organizer, if it's the political party's organizers, and you recognize that, look, as a big political party, we need, let's say, 6 organizers to be the political party, whatever. So in terms of who comes first in the thing or who comes second, we will do it. The name is going to be NDC or MPP, what? Organizer. Yes, but it's not going, why? If you are a women's organizer, no, you don't listen to what I'm saying. Because the conversation is that by bringing even a man and a woman together in that framework to discuss issues that concern women in the constituency or for the political party, that in itself helps the party to structure better. Instead of leaving women, making it look like, women's organizer is only women issues. Gender issues are not only for women. Gender issues are not only for women. So it should be a concern to the parties. That you don't relegate some positions to women and then some others is men. So to the extent that the normal call is for women to gravitate towards particular positions, and if you are bold to even put yourself up for, let's say, the chair positions, or the fact that they will say, oh, look at this woman trying to become the chairperson. Because it's not the norm. If there was nothing like women's this, women's that, and the political parties is a restructure to say organizer is organizer, and make them know that, look, if we are going to have 6 organizers, 3 must be men and 3 must be women. They will vote accordingly. That's a bylaw or something the party itself can do. They will vote accordingly. But the way we leave it, and then, because the competition is tight and everybody wants to put themselves, everybody argues in their own, their own favor. And it is not helping. And that is why most of the parties are not growing.
You know, they are not attractive to a lot of people now. They are not broad because the diversity is not there. You know, the diversity is not there. Everybody is just invested in one narrow vision. They need to widen the structures and open up, you know, for more people to participate. And when I say more people, I mean we need to hear more women's voices. And we need to hear men as partners asking for, you know, these kind of reforms within the party structure.
But Dr. Yakubu, to be fair to the parties also, the other positions are open to everybody. I mean, apart from, say, the youth organizer, which has a age limit in the NPP, for instance, if you look at, you know, the youth organizer and the women organizer, which are reserved for, you know, a group of people, together with, say, in the NPP, Nasara coordinator, and the remaining positions are open to everybody. If you want to contest, you pick up a form and then you contest. You're not prevented from contesting. If you contest and you win, why not? But if you contest and you do not win, at least there are certain positions, and the political parties, being mindful of ensuring you know, gender balance, have also instituted appointive positions. And so if it so happens that in the elective positions you do not have, say, regional balance, they would use the appointed positions to you know, achieve regional balance, and also use that to achieve, you know, the women participation.
Wednesday, to ensure better outcomes, nobody undertakes it comes to political party structure or political party leadership. No, that is a gender-blind policy where you say, oh, everybody can come and participate. This one, nobody is. Look, you know the issue about growing up. In our context, there are a lot of unconscious bias, a lot of people who are timid, who are, you know, your confidence levels are. There's a whole lot of issues that prevent a lot of people from reaching their potential. Then, as a political party, you want to encourage more women to participate. You are not going to ensure better outcome. That is why, even as a country, we want to pursue affirmative action. Even at the national level, we want to pursue affirmative action. So what is affirmative action within a political party? Rwanda is doing it. They did it, went forward, have even reformed it and made it new. You and I, if we visit Rwanda, you know what? You don't even believe you are in Africa. They have done it because there are more people there talking for the other people in the society.
Okay.
We have feminized the face of poverty in Ghana. We say we are fighting poverty, yet the people that are the face of poverty are even less represented to talk about the poverty. Why do you speak for them? You know, so there are a whole lot of arguments we can bring to this issue. You want to make it
will continue with the argument.
You can't do that. In Hausa, we call it Kowa de Kowa. Kowa de Kowa policy does not work in political restructure. They can't do that. They will need to take an affirmative action position if they really want to see better outcomes for their political parties.
We'll get back to that shortly. We need to go for a final break here on Upfront on the JoyNews channel. And my guest this evening is Dr. Nansata Yakubu. She's a democracy engineer. We're having a conversation about, you know, the gender question when it comes to ministerial nominees. Stay with us. We'll be right back. All right, so welcome back, and thank you very much for staying with us here on the JoyNews channel. And tonight on Upfront, we're engaging Dr. Nansata Yakubu, who is a democracy engineer. We're asking the gender question when it comes to the ministerial nominees. And Dr. Yakubu, so let's get back to the point. So if I get you clearly, you're calling for an affirmative action, some have called it, and you're also calling for positive discrimination, if I could put it that way. Is that what you're calling for?
Positive discrimination?
Yes.
I think immediately people hear the word discrimination, I think affirmative action is good enough.
We have qualified it into positive discrimination.
Yeah, it's positive discrimination, but affirmative action is also good enough. That's fine. Equity, fairness, you know, social justice issues. That's what we are calling for. And we are calling also on the power of diversity. You know, if you want to have inclusion, you know, in your democratic processes and be known for good governance across the world, inclusion is powerful, and you need to harness the diversity. There are minority rights issues, there are persons with disability, there are men, there are women, we have a rural-urban dichotomy. We have a whole lot of issues that all comes into play with that diversity issue. One that we aptly capture is this issue of regional balance, which you alluded to, when we are doing this. And the same way as...
Hello, Dr. Yakubu. Hello, Dr. Yakubu. I think we're losing you.
Hello? Yes, I think I went off for a bit. So, yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
You lost me for a bit.
Yes, we can hear you now. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the same way that you alluded, to the issue of the regional balance is the same way that you can do a gender balance. It's as easy as that. You can do a gender balance if you put your mind to it. That's not the most difficult thing that government can do. Governments have done a lot of difficult things, including containing coronavirus, as you and I know, in Ghana. That was one of the most difficult. Look at Brazil now. Look at India. They are back to contending it. Look at the UK, different variants. And relatively, that was one of the most. So it is not like if we put our minds to it, we cannot do it. We can do it. We can do it. And we have also committed that we want to do it. So all we are saying is stay true to your commitment and deliver on the commitment. It is not too much to ask. It is not like gender groups or women's groups or parliamentarians or politicians or people from the other ones calling, but governments have committed that these are our gender commitments for the country. So deliver on their commitment. That is all we are saying.
Great. Some have also said, for instance,
commitments.
Finally, because some have also said, and they use the example of Gloria Boydu, for instance, who was always talking about gender balance and decided to contest election herself in the then Frafraha electoral area and became an assembly member. And thus could say, well, I tell you, let all of us get involved in it. Some have said, this probably may be the time where a lot of the activists and the advocates should be getting involved in themselves, not even the partisan one, but you could start also from getting involved in the non-partisan one, at least if you are scared of the partisan nature of our politics. You get into the local level elections as a starting point to, galvanize female support and also galvanize lots of women into contesting these elections and being very visible and seen in the political arena. What would you say to that?
That is a pathway. It's not a bad pathway, but remember my earlier submission that it is not left with only women to fight it. It is not the gender balance issue and Ghana's gender commitment and making sure that diversity is represented accurately across the board as the country has done. It's not a women's issue. It is not about more women leaving the activism field or leaving the development space to go and do that. There's a lot of good work that women and men are doing in the development space when it comes to gender. That goes back to complement what the politicians do. So it is not only the political space that you can contribute. There are other spaces. And in other executive spaces, it is not a politician that you can put there. You can put other women in your parties. Even if you want to stay only to your political parties, you can put other women who are qualified in your own political parties, in those spaces. So that's the argument. Yeah.
Hello, Dr. Yakubu. I think we have to. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes. No, I'm still here.
Yes, go ahead. Yes.
So I'm saying that so you can commit to putting more women forward in those spaces. You don't have to just put women because they are women. No, nobody is asking for that kind. It's not a favor. We have committed that this and A, B, and C is what we want to do. We need to see progress that will lead to better outcomes. So it's not about the argument that people should put themselves forward for political power. People have done it. We have a lot of women who put themselves for political office, and they have won. And most female members in parliament are the first ones to tell you that they even like to compete. And they compete with men, and they beat the men, and you know the results. Other men beat other men. Other women beat other women. Women too beat men. It's across the board. It's not an issue of women are afraid to compete. No. We have had fantastic women competing and winning. We are saying that to be able to make sure that you gain a net of a lot of women who will be at that fantastic level, we need to do more to be able to make sure that political participation for women is a lot. And political participation doesn't mean you should be in a political party or should be in political office. There's a lot that people do on advocacy for issues on child marriage, on female genital mutilation, on alleged witchcraft. All that is part of women's issues to get to political participation, harmful cultural practices, ensuring that traditional leaders are highly sensitized for issues around women, making sure that a board like the Peace Council has adequate representation of both sexes, council of state, things like that. It's not all the time that you have to just go and put yourself on a ballot paper, for them to put their finger on. There are lots of other spaces, and we need, people to commit to make sure that this happens, so that the next time we're having the conversation, you'll be saying, oh, now we are at 40%, and then we say, yes, we are moving, forward. But now it's not a good business.
Well, we hope that by the time the president is done with the appointment of board members and other statutory bodies, we will get there. Thank you very much.
We will have another conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yakubu, for joining us this evening on Upfront on the Joy News. And that'll be all from us this evening. My name is Winston. I'm on behalf of the team. Thank you very much for joining us. Catch me tomorrow at 5:50 a.m. or the Super Morning Show on Joy 99.7 FM. Have a lovely evening. Keep watching the Joy News channel.